let's just talk for a second and chat about our lives, where we came from, how I came to be in the world, I guess, since you're here. And tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and just maybe a little bit of background. You said in that last segment that you were saved at the age of 5, but we grew up in Massachusetts. So tell us a little bit about that.
Grew up in a little town in Massachusetts, and New England is one of those areas that, there's not a lot of churches. It's not like down in the South where you have a church on every corner. You have churches, but there's not many. There's not many. And if you find a church that preaches the gospel and that is, really solid, then it's important that, that's your church, that's your home church. So I grew up in the Assembly of God. My parents met at Bible school. And from a very young age, I've been really blessed. I feel like God put me in a family that loved God and showed us, that God was important in their lives. My parents definitely did that throughout all of our lives and told us about God from a very young age. And I was blessed in that I had some very good pastors that were very solid and taught us scripture from, a very, beginning foundational aspect. And then I left the church went out into college. And when I was in college, I met your dad and fell in love. So sometimes when you fall in love, you don't always see things. And I think you've shared a little bit with your Patreons and stuff so even though Brandon's dad claimed to be a believer, after we got married, things were very clear that a lot of the things that hidden agendas in his life. And it caused a lot of problems for us. He was using drugs, and here I am, like, I'm really just like a country bumpkin, I've never had any experience with, like, drugs, especially not major drugs. And so I was more than a little naive, and but I was committed to this marriage because, I felt like as a Christian that was our mandate. Like, you're married for life. So we tried to work it out, but in the long run, long and short of it is that Stephen decided that drugs and alcohol were more important than our relationship and being a dad.
Yeah, like, in a lot of ways. I mean, at least from my perspective, and like we haven't talked extensively about, we haven't had like a million conversations about this, but from what I understand from the stories you told me over the years, and from my recollection, it very much seemed like there's just other things that were his God, like, and he just put everything else above God and even above us a lot of times, where he would like take our only car and go do dumb stuff, or like just kind of abandon us a bit.
Yeah, so eventually got to the pinnacle where I basically asked him, I said, you need to get help. I can't do this for you. You're going to have to do that. And after a short period of time, he tried, but it had such a hold on him that he just couldn't get away from it. And the drugs ended up literally killing him.
Right.
Let's
slow down for a second. So during that period, so you have me and my older brother, right? And you kind of go into this period where you're a single mom essentially with us two, and like you have your mom and dad to kind of help out and family to kind of help out. But what is that period like for you, especially for your faith? Like, how did that grow your faith? How did you struggle through that time? Like, what was that like for you in those years or that time? Oof. How long was it?
We had separated, and my mom and dad were gracious and let me come home. And I was actually pregnant with you, and so you hadn't been born yet. and your older brother Morgan was little. He was a little more than a toddler, and so we went home. And during that time, that I was home with mom and dad, I mean, really, it was just trying to give him time, Stephen, time to. I was even willing if he had gotten treatment, and it really, it was something that was stuck, that we would still be married today.
Yeah. So you were really trying to work it out. Yeah, we really did.
Yeah. And well, I did.
Right.
And then he just he made some really intentionally bad choices beyond that, and abandoned us, basically. Like, he didn't give us any financial support. He was seeing other people, and at that point I had to I sought out counsel. And when I went to my pastor and I said, listen, I'm not sure what to do here. Like, I was willing to see it through with rehab, and hoping that he would get healthy, and that he would trust in the process and go through this program that he was in. And I explained to him, Pastor David, that he's abandoned us. He's not here. He's not helping with the kids. I'm pregnant with this baby, and I have Morgan. And I have to say, I really appreciated his counsel, because I was just wrecked.
Right. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? That's a lot to take on.
It wasn't just that I was upset about the situation. It was also, I was spiritually torn. Yeah. Because I was committed to this marriage.
But your faith during this time, does it ever waver at all? Or are you like, God, why would you allow this to happen? Or were you always just very no, this is where I'm at. God, you've got me. I know I'm going to get through this.
It was God, I know you have me. But emotionally, and mentally, I had been beaten up. Really, really, really beaten up emotionally. And so headspace-wise, I after we divorced, I ended up going through counseling myself, because I needed to get healthy again. Because what had happened was I became codependent on his disease of alcoholism. And
that's so interesting, because I don't see you as that type of person. It's so interesting to hear that, because I see you as one of the most independent people I've ever met, where you can just conquer the world and deal with everything, right? But it's interesting to know that came through this circumstance.
Well, I mean, I felt like there was me before the marriage, then there was me during the marriage, and I didn't feel like that same person again. So I needed to find myself again, and I knew that God had given me this inner strength, because without it, I don't know how I would have survived, honestly, without God. But having two little, you were just born, having a brand new baby.
Yep.
And, and Morgan, I think, was 2.5.
Yeah.
And my parents were great and everything, but they, and they were there for us in the sense of just a shelter, and, but financially, I felt like it was my responsibility to make sure that you guys were safe, that you had a future.
Right.
And I wasn't really relying on Stephen at this point, because I knew that he had another agenda, and it wasn't us.
Hey, real quick, if you would just subscribe to our channel, we're really trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and we're so close. You could help us out by just clicking that button real quick. Thank you so much.
So, the process of trust, and back to your question, the process of trusting God, that was it.
Right.
I didn't have it. Like, there was no waving. Like, okay, God, where are we going with? Like, what's going on? What are we gonna do? And he was. I can't even begin to tell you how incredibly faithful he was. He opened doors and opportunities for me to get trained.
Right.
I went to it was like a program for moms that had, that were single parents. And at the time, I know this is going to date me a little bit, but computers were becoming like a thing, and like big technology and stuff like that. And I didn't have any computer training. I didn't have any knowledge. I mean, the internet was new.
Right.
Like, for real, people, the internet was new.
This is like 95 probably, right?
This was,
or 94, 95.
No,
or right when I was born.
93. Yeah, 93. So, brand new baby, toddler. And so I went to this program. It was like a secretarial program. And during that time, I learned, how to type well, and I learned about, all the secretarial skills that I would need to get a job that was going to make some money and that I could support our family. And part of that was learning computers at a very basic level, because even then, Windows was not a thing. So, like, it was just starting. And so with that knowledge and the knowledge, they also offered me a medical terminology class, which propelled what I had done previously. Was what I worked as a certified nursing assistant in my early 20s. And so between that knowledge and the knowledge that they had given me, I was able to get a better job and working in a nursing home as a unit secretary. And so that gave me, a full-time job. It gave me benefits. And I was able to take our lives, and I was able to, because my parents were so generous and let us stay there for a little while, I was able to save money and eventually was able to buy a house as a single mom. And I think that's, really when we established as a family, when we moved to, it was a couple towns over, and we had bought a house. And that's probably most of your early memories.
I remember a little bit of being at Grandma and Grandpa's, but not much, for sure. But it's so interesting to me. I love the story of this, because not only to see your faith journey and see where God kind of took you, but also to see the generational impact that you've had, right? Because like Grandpa had this faith and Grandma had this faith, and they kind of poured it into you guys, and they put you in a good position, but then that position kind of gets ruined because you're in this marriage and everything kind of gets destroyed. So now you're starting at a different location again. Then you're kind of rebuilding yourself, remaking your faith, and kind of becoming, like you said, this new person. But then whenever we're born and we're coming into the world, like, you're allowing us to start at a different location as well, and allowing us to start at, I think, a privileged location, right? Well, we weren't like the most wealthy people. We weren't, like in this privileged position in that sense. Like, it was more of, like, I was in a position to understand God better than, let's say, a family that's someone growing up in an atheist family, or growing up in a different religious family, right?
And then, when we moved to this, into our new house, God also provided another church family for us. Yeah. And I will tell you that family, that it became our family. Like, there was a lot of people in my position where either they had been recently divorced or they were older and hadn't gotten married. And so we had a group of like 10 of us that would get together. We would play volleyball on Friday nights.
I remember that for sure.
Yeah, and it became just this breath of fresh air to be in community with other believers. And from that, like, friendships were formed. And I mean, just when I say friendships, it wasn't just like light friendships. These were like knitted friendships that God really knitted us together. And even today, even though I no longer live in Massachusetts, I actually live in Florida, but and we've been there for a long time.
Yeah.
That's basically where you spent most of the rest of, or later part of your life.
Yeah.
But I still am in communication with them, and it became such a sweet time because we would pray for each other, we would fellowship together, and honestly, leaving Massachusetts was seriously hard. Seriously hard, people. Because God had created such a beautiful community for us, and it was, hard to leave a house that I had purchased as a single mom. And but in that process, even though it was really difficult, and I mean, I'll be honest, there were years when I felt like I was going to be wrecked, like emotionally. God, in His sovereignty, saw a bigger picture than I did. I really feel like with your life and with Morgan's and Liam's, that your journey as musicians, your journey, in the arts wouldn't have happened had we stayed in Massachusetts. It would have been much different.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you spent your first 10 years of your life, ministry life. A big portion of that was music.
Absolutely.
And, and then your older brother is a teacher, and he's a music teacher. And then I have a son, Liam, who is also a singer, and is currently in school. So, and although my daughter Grace has chosen not to pursue music, she's still an artisan. And all of that, and all of that is, I think, retrospectively, God knew those talents were in you and moved us to Florida because of it, because the county we were in really tries to uphold and tries to create in students that want that music program, want the arts. They really do try to do a good job of bringing that to the school system.
Yeah, there was definitely there was infinite reasons for us to move to Florida for sure, but yeah, super, super cool. I love getting some of this on film because it helps. I think it'll be cool to look back on, and just see, some of those stories and have those. But
and the other point to this too is, like, there's a lot more to this story. And the reason you don't have a lot of, like, nasty, dirty memories of Dad is because I didn't tell you. Right. Like, I felt it wasn't my job to put a big wall between myself and your father. That was not my job. I felt my job was to love you, to point you to Christ, to provide for you as best I could, and to keep you safe. That was that was the biggest thing. Like, as a single parent, and single parents will tell you, like, the biggest thing is that you want your kid to thrive, but more importantly, you want them to be safe. And so, in that, I wanted you to have a life where you didn't have to worry. You didn't have to struggle for everything. So God and I worked together, and it was my mandate that I didn't want you to hate your dad. That was never it was not my job to do that. And even though he and I had our differences, and they were serious, they were like, really deep, and he caused me a lot of pain. It wasn't my job to make you hate him. And even, like, had he gotten himself together, I wish that could have happened, that you could have formed a relationship with him. But because of his drug use, it ended up taking his life. And unfortunately, that's just reality.
Yeah, and God makes beauty out of it, you know, like, who knows, like, I doubt we would be here having this conversation. Obviously, like, we'd be in a completely different place in a lot of different ways, but and I, you know, and I hope that somebody hearing this story will resonate with them. It will.
You know?
Yeah, it will, for sure.
That there is a process, but God, in his wisdom and in his majesty and his sovereignty, will take you through. You just, you know, lean into him. Lean into, you know, just trusting that he will bring the right people around you, that he will send the right support system, and then just really pray about it. Because God loves us. No matter what, God loves us. Yeah. You know? I mean, if he is for us, who can be against us? Yeah. You know? And, so. Yeah.
Anyway, love you.
I love you too.
Definitely more to that story for sure. We could go on for a long time, but maybe we'll have another chance to talk another time. But, yeah, a lot of craziness for sure. And that's what I was talking about in that last segment too, is like all these statistics say, you know, if your family, or especially your father, is like this, and this, then you should follow in those footsteps in a lot of ways and do these different things. And I think if we had stayed in Massachusetts, or, you know, even gone to live, like, let's say with his family, or doing these different things, like there could have been a lot of different influences that impacted us and, you know, and changed our lives for sure. But, you know, I'm happy where God has us, you know, and even the hardships that we have now, and even the different things that we're going through, like, still, like we talk about all the time, right? Following Jesus is better, not easy. And I'm sure you felt that way throughout all of your journey, is like, I know this is going to be better, but I have to do what God has asked me to do, you know, and not take the easy way out, and not take these short roads that are going to hurt me in the long run, you know? So, yeah.
Do not grow weary in doing good.
Yes. Yeah. There you go. If you want to check out this full episode, you can do that on patreon.com/thesnipelife. This is the best way to help us to support what we're doing here on the Better Not Easy channel. Thank you very much. Just remember that following Jesus is better not easy.